Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Carol Leong. Welcome to CP6053, Research Methods and Communication. I will be talking about the section on results and discussion. The learning objectives of this section include differentiate the various types of variables, recommend the appropriate statistical tests to use for different types of variables and experimental designs, perform statistical tests using an appropriate software, and the one that we'll be using most frequently in this module is Minitab. Draw conclusion based on the patterns and relationship inferred from a given set of data. Present data in appropriate format in a scientific report. To analyze the importance and aspects of ethics in research, this portion will be done through e-learning through the CITI program. And lastly, apply the different formats of citation in a scientific report. Hopefully, this will be done in the context of your FYP and it will be useful for you. Before we begin, make sure that you have the following softwares in your laptop. Minitab, which you can download from the software list for SP Student when you click on the link. Microsoft Excel, as well as EndNote, which you can get from the Library Eliza website. Also, during class session, please bring your laptop. Now, we'll first talk about the different types of data. When people talk about an experiment, they typically mention what are the variables that will be measured. What exactly is a variable? A variable is a characteristic or condition that can change or take on different values. For example, if you have a research question on how many children do you have, the variable that you will measure would be the number of children. If your research question is on how hot is this liquid, you will typically measure the temperature of the liquid. If you ask what kind of taste does this noodle have, then the variable that you will measure would be the taste. Is there formation of precipitate in the drink? Then you will be measuring formation of precipitate, either yes or no. Also, you can ask the question, how likely would you buy this food product? And the variable that will be measured would be likelihood. It can be unlikely, likely, or very likely. So in conclusion, the variable that you will measure would depend on the kind of question that you're asking in the experiment. Therefore, it is important to ask critical questions and to find the appropriate variable that you want to measure in your experiment for your results to make sense. There are many different types of variables, and they can be categorized under qualitative or quantitative. Under qualitative variable, the variable could be ordinal. That means there is a certain ranking order, such as if you are measuring severity of pain, it can be very pain, relative or moderate pain, or no pain. So these have a certain ranking order. Therefore, these are considered as ordinal variable. Another type of qualitative variable are what we call nominal variable. That means there is no specific ranking order. For example, gender is an example of a nominal variable. For quantitative variable, you can have either discrete or continuous. Discrete variables are typically whole numbers. They are considered as quantitative as there's a number involved. However, these are whole numbers with no decimal place. For example, the number of schools, the number of children that you have. These are all discrete variables. Lastly, you have continuous variable. These are variables that can have decimal places. For example, your height, your weight. These are all examples of continuous variable. Of these four different types of variable, ordinal, nominal, and discrete are considered as categorical variables. Now, let's look at the previous list of questions and variables that we talked about. What type of variable are these? Are they ordinal, nominal, discrete, or continuous? Try this for yourself, and if you are not able to identify which type of variable they are, please go back to the previous slide. Are you ready for the answers? How many children do you have? Number of children. Now, since there's a number involved, this is quantitative. But are they discrete or continuous? These are discrete as the number of children have to be whole numbers. Temperature. Are these qualitative or quantitative? Since there's numbers involved, they are quantitative. But for temperature, you can have decimal place. Therefore, they're considered as continuous variables. Taste. Obviously, taste in this case, since you are measuring sweet, salty, sour, these are qualitative variables. And there is no particular ranking order, therefore, they are considered as nominal variable. Formation of precipitate. Since this is either a yes or no question and answer, they are considered as nominal variable. Lastly, likelihood of buying the product. Unlikely, likely, very likely. There's a certain ranking order to this, as very likely is much higher than unlikely. And therefore, these are considered as ordinal variables. Now, in the previous section, the previous lecturer will have taught you what are the different types of research studies. Just to recap, you can have experimental research studies where you can look at things like effect of A on B to establish a specific cause and effect relationship. Typically, you will have a control versus a treatment group. This is when you run the experiment to study the cause and effect relationship. You can also have research studies where you do product characterization to identify what are the different components in a product using methods such as HPLC. You can also be doing optimization studies where you change the parameters in order to achieve a specific goal. Okay, this can also involve innovating a new methodology to process a certain product or to find out a specific research goal. There are also observational studies where you look at the correlation between the different variables using an observational standpoint, meaning you do not manipulate the experimental type of approach. So this is different from experimental because you are only observing. These can involve things like survey and so on. Now, for the very first type of research, experimental research, this will be the most common type that most of you will be involved in. For experimental research, there is typically an independent variable and a dependent variable. Independent variable is one that stands alone and is not changed by other variables that is measured. Typically, they're expected to influence the dependent variable. Dependent variable is also known as the outcome variable. This is the one where you typically measure in the experiment. For example, if we have a study to examine the effect of environmental temperature on the growth of bacteria in fried rice, what would be the independent and dependent variable in this case? The dependent variable in this case, since it is the outcome variable, it will be the growth of bacteria. On the other hand, the independent variable, the one which you manipulate, is the environmental temperature. Now, look at these three examples in three different research papers. What are the independent variable and dependent variable in each case? If you are not able to answer this question, please recap by reviewing the previous section again. Are you ready for the answer? In the first example, chemical and sensory characteristics of products fried in high oleate, low linoleic rapeseed oil. What is the variable involved? The independent variable in this case is the type of oil, because you are manipulating that. And the outcome variable or dependent variable is the chemical and sensory characteristics, because this is what you are measuring. In the second example, antimicrobial efficacy of phytochemicals against Bacillus cereus in reconstituted infant rice cereal. In this case, what are you measuring? You are measuring the antimicrobial efficacy. Therefore, that is the dependent variable. And what are you manipulating? You are basically manipulating the phytochemicals by putting in the phytochemical to see how it affects the antimicrobial efficacy. Therefore, the independent variable in this case are the use of phytochemicals. In the last example, effect of sodium alginate with 3 molecular weight forms on the water holding capacity of chicken breast myosin gel. In this case, you are measuring the water holding capacity. Therefore, water holding capacity is the dependent variable. And the independent variable, you are looking at the different types of sodium alginate, which means the 3 different molecular weight form of sodium alginate. These are the independent variable that you are manipulating. Now, let us use your FYP project as an example. Based on your FYP, identify your research question and list out all the variables that would be collected. Identify the type of variables that they fall under, whether they are nominal, discrete, ordinal, or continuous. And, if appropriate, identify the independent and dependent variable in your experiment. If you are not sure, you can look for your supervisor for your FYP project, as well as bring it to class for discussion.